Hello, everybody. Today's lesson is going to be factor by grouping. So ultimately, in today's lesson, you're going to see problems not with two terms, not with three terms, but with four terms. And we're going to utilize the concept of greatest common factor to do this. So I'm going to go through this. I think I have 5 examples. You go through it step by step. Feel free to pause at any time. And let's get going. So as you can see, for these problems that we're going to do today, I have 4 terms, okay? And what I like to do is I like to write those 4 terms and I group the first 2 and I group the second 2, okay? So that's the first step is I'm going to group them, okay? Now, hang on, sorry about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to look at the first group. And I'm going to find the biggest, the greatest common factor between those 2 terms. Now, I've noticed the first term is 4x cubed. The second term is 2x squared. So I know I can divide both by a 2. And both of these have x's. And not only do they have one x, but they both have at least 2. Okay? So if I write this first piece, 4 divided by 2 is 2. X cubed divided by x squared would just leave me with 1x. 2 divided by 2 is 1. X squared divided by x squared, well, then there won't be any x's left because there were 2. We divided 2 out, so there's none left in that term. So let's take a look at the second term, the second grouping. If you look at this second grouping, all right, I want to take out the greatest common factor. Now, I have a -2 and a -1. Now, there's not really a whole lot in common there. The only thing I can do is I want to take out a -1. Okay? That's going to be the... Now, they don't both have x's, so you can't take an x out. So I'm going to divide out a -1. -2 divided by -1 is a +2. That term still has an x. -1 divided by -1 would now be a +1. And I want you to take a look at what I have here. Do you guys see how when I took out the greatest common factors, my groupings were the same? I got a 2x plus 1 in both of my groupings. Okay? So now watch how I write my answer. This is the important piece. Feel free to pause, rewind as needed. I'm going to take that grouping that they have in common. Okay? I'm going to write it out front. That makes up half my answer. The other half of my answer are the greatest common factors. The 2x squared and the, let me get a blue marker here, and the -1. And ladies and gentlemen, this is my final answer. So the first half, I want you guys to understand, is the parentheses that they have in common. The second half is made up of the greatest common factors. Okay, so that's kind of how I set up my answer there. So I have a few of these examples. The first time might have been a little shaky. It'll get better. You'll see me do the same thing every time. So I'm going to start. I want to write this. 24x cubed minus 6x squared. That's my first group. 8x minus 2. That's my second group. I am going to take out a greatest common factor from my first group. So I think for a second I have 24 and 6. I'm pretty sure both of those are divisible by 6. They both have x's. And not only do they both have x's, they both have at least 2 x's. Okay. So if I take out that greatest common factor, you always write it in front, right? We've done that for all of our problems. And 24 divided by 6 is a 4. X cubed divided by x squared is just x. -6 divided by 6 is a -1. And x squared divided by x squared, there's no x's left. Okay? So I'm going to do the same thing for this other group over here. I have an 8x and a minus 2. I want to find the greatest common factor between those two terms. So both of these are divisible by 2. So 8 divided by 2 is a 4. There would still be an x. 2 divided by 2 is a 1. Now, if you notice, do you see how I have the same groupings? Okay, so I have a 4x plus 1, right? That makes up half my answer. All right, now if I go and I kind of cross these off, what I have left is the GCF from my first group. Oops, I wrote a 2, sorry about that. The GCF from my first group was a 6x squared, and then I have the GCF from my second group, which was a positive 2. And ladies and gentlemen, this is my answer. Okay? So again, this was the parentheses in common. And this was made up of the greatest common factors from each group. Okay? I got a third example. I think I told you I think I have 5 of these, okay? So again, feel free to pause, rewind if you want to try to do one on your own, okay? But I like to write out, let me get my purple marker here, my problem. I group the first two terms. I group the second 2 terms. I'm going to take out a greatest common factor. So in this case, I can take out a 5. Both of these have at least 2 x's, so x squared. I'm going to write that greatest common factor out front. 5 divided by 5 is 1. X cubed divided by x squared is just x. Negative 10 divided by 5 is a negative 2. X squared divided by x squared, there wouldn't be any x's left. So then I'm going to come over to my other group. I'm going to take out that GCF. If I divide out a 3, 3 divided by 3 is a 1. Still has an x. 6 divided by 3 is a negative 2. So my first group for my answer, half my answer is the parentheses that they have in common. The other half of my answer is going to be made up of the greatest common factors. So I have a 5x squared and then the positive 3, right? So the pieces that were out front that we factored out of each group, that's what makes up my other grouping. And this would be my final answer. If you distribute that out, you will get back to the original function, okay? All right. Example number 4, same idea, repetition, okay? Feel free to pause, do this one on your own if you like. I'm going to take my first 2 terms, group them. My last 2 terms, group them. I'm going to find what these have in common. Now, 3 and 4, there isn't really anything that I can divide both of those by. There's no common divider. So the best thing I can do is I can divide each one by a 1. And they both have at least 2 x's. So if I do that, if I take that 1x squared out, 3 divided by 1 is still 3. X cubed divided by x squared is just going to leave me with 1x. 4 divided by 1 is 4. X squared divided by x squared, there wouldn't be any x's left. So now I want to take out the greatest common factor of the next piece. Oops, I wrote a little squared there. There shouldn't have been a squared there. Okay. So now if I do this, if I take a 3 out, 9 divided by 3 is 3. Leave the x. Negative 12 divided by 3 is a negative 4. So the grouping that they have in common is 3x minus 4. And then the greatest common factors are going to be a 1x squared and a plus 3. And this would be my final answer. Okay? All right. This last one's a doozy. It's got something a little extra in it. We're going to talk about it. Okay? I wanted to give something a little bit more interesting for the last one. I don't think this is necessarily testable level, but you never know, so I want to throw it out there. I'm going to do everything the same. We'll take our time. I group my first two terms. I group my second two terms. I'm going to take out the greatest common factor, so 9 and 36. I can divide both of those by 9 and an x squared. So if I get a 9x squared out front, 9 divided by 9 is 1. X cubed divided by x squared is just x. 36 divided by 9 is 4. X squared divided by x squared, there would be no x's left. So we're going to do the same thing now with the second group. I'm going to divide each of these by a negative 4. Now, you're probably thinking, why did you divide it by a negative? Well, because I don't really like that first term to be negative. Not only that, but at this point, you kind of realize we want it to match the grouping from the red part. So negative 4 divided by negative 4 is a positive 1, still an x. Negative 16 divided by negative 4 is a positive 4. And you can see that those groupings are matched. That's kind of like my check. That's telling me that I'm doing it right. So if I write this answer, the group that they have in common is a 1x plus 4. And then the greatest common factors give me a 9x squared minus 4. Now, if you got to here, you're doing a wonderful job. I did decide just to add something slightly to this, and you may or may not catch it. You see this group that I have from the greatest common factors, the 9x squared minus 4? That is a difference of squares. 9x squared is a perfect square. 4 is a perfect square. So I would write that as a 3x plus 2, 3x minus 2. Okay? And ladies and gentlemen, that would be factored completely. Okay? Hopefully this was informative. If you have any questions or concerns, please email me. I'll be happy to help. Hopefully this video helps you out for the factoring QPC. Bye, guys.